So welcome to our Global Network webinars. My name is Alexander Loschke, and I will be moderating this webinar today together with my colleagues Sean Lovell and Panya Yu. Today we have with us three colleagues, hopefully. Clara from UN Tourism, Peter Laimer, and Julio López Astor, who are the co-chairs of the UN Tourism Committee on Statistics. They will talk about how to measure the sustainability of tourism. Tourism is a major global economic sector, contributing about 4% to global GDP, and one of the most important export categories. Tourism is also a driver and enabler of sustainable development. The statistical framework for measuring the sustainability of tourism provides a solution to the pressing need for a harmonized methodology to effectively assess the sustainability of tourism. This framework was developed under the leadership of the UN Tourism Committee on Statistics and by a dedicated multi-stakeholder expert group. In 2024, so earlier this year, the UN Statistical Commission endorsed the first sectoral statistical framework that goes beyond GDP and which demonstrates the potential to integrate data across economic, environmental, and social dimensions. In this webinar today, our speakers will introduce the framework and will reflect on its relevance and will highlight pioneering applications. So let me now quickly introduce our speakers. So we have with us Clara, who is the Acting Director of Statistics at UN Tourism. She works on the development and promotion of international standards in the area of tourism and leads activities on capacity development and international data sets. Peter is a statistician specialized in tourism and travel statistics. At Statistik Austria, he is responsible for tourism statistics since the year 1998. And Peter is an active member of several international working groups and has a leading role in the UN Tourism Committee on Statistics. Julio is in charge of the Research and Knowledge Department at the National Tourist Office of Spain and is currently also a co-chair of the UN Tourism Committee on Statistics. He has been involved in tourism marketing and research for many, many years. So now before we start, just a few more practical remarks. We will first hear the presentations before we will have a Q&A session at the end. During the presentation, feel free to write comments and questions into the meeting chat at any time. And then during the Q&A session, we encourage you to ask your question yourself live to create a more interactive atmosphere. As always, this Global Network webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the Global Network of Data Officers and Statisticians at yammer.com/UNstats. We invite you to continue the discussions on the Global Network after the webinar. So now over to you, Clara. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Allow me to first of all check with you that you can see my slides and that you can hear me properly.
I can see the slides. Can you please put them in presentation mode? That would be nice. Yeah, looks good.
Okay,
thank you.
Wonderful. So yes, thank you very much. And it really is a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much to UNSD, to Alexander and to Panya for facilitating this webinar, focusing on tourism measurements. And I'm really happy to be here also, of course, with my good friends and colleagues, Peter from Statistics Austria and Julio from the Spanish Ministry in charge of tourism, who are both indeed co-chairs of our committee on statistics at UN Tourism, and who have in fact played both of them leading roles in the development of this framework that I will have the pleasure to introduce to you now. Now, to give a little bit of context, we have all been tourists, right, at some point in our lives, and hopefully more regularly, right, every year. In any case, many of us have the fortune to be able to enjoy in tourism, and so we have all seen instances, right, of tourism being sustainable or perhaps being not so sustainable, right? Tourism can, on the one hand, propel economic opportunities, even in remote areas, social inclusiveness, cultural exchange, and peace building. It can also help make economic sense of protecting the environment and cultural heritage. But at the same time, we have all also seen instances, and in the news, for example, over these past few months, especially here in Europe, of instances of locals manifesting themselves against a tourism model that they feel doesn't properly cater to their needs. But we have also seen examples of popular beaches or other tourism sites being shut down momentarily to allow for nature to recover. So clearly, this is a very complex issue with many potential positive and perhaps not so positive challenges in tourism. And so it becomes increasingly important to be able to measure and benchmark performance of tourism across countries, within countries, but also with respect to the broader economic, social, and environmental systems that tourism is nested in. So there are basically two rationales, right, for considering tourism and its sustainability. On the one hand, there's a realization that tourism can become more sustainable and should become more sustainable, and at the same time, there's the realization that tourism can support or even deter efforts towards sustainable development more broadly. And this has, in fact, been recognized in the Sustainable Development Goals and the UN 2030 Agenda as part of goals 8, 12, and 14 that explicitly mention sustainable tourism. So we need information credible and comparable information to better assess these elements. And to harness the full potential of tourism as a force for good, we must harness the power of data. Statistics is, in fact, part of our mandate at UN Tourism as a UN specialized agency. And we have an explicit mandate in this sense to collect, analyze, publish, and standardize, and to overall improve the statistics of tourism and to promote their integration within the broader sphere of the United Nations system. And for this reason, over the past 7 years, under the umbrella of the Committee on Statistics at UN Tourism, a global effort has been taking place towards developing a statistical framework for measuring the sustainability of tourism. Here we see, just to give you a bit of the context, we see the 3 existing standards when it comes to tourism measurement. With respect to basic tourism statistics, we have the international recommendations for tourism statistics that you might be aware of. These deal principally with the measurement of flows, right, of people and associated expenditures or financial flows related to tourism. And next, we also see the standard for economic contribution, also called the tourism satellite account, which really deals with things like tourism direct GDP, the value added of the tourism industries, and jobs. And now, over these past years, the most recent development has been this statistical framework for measuring the sustainability of tourism that builds on these previous 2 existing standards in tourism measurement and integrated it with other systems of measurement, such as the system of environmental and economic accounting, the different standards available in employment statistics, to give a more broader and to push, let's say, the limits of the system of tourism statistics beyond an economic sphere to include also environmental and more social aspects of tourism. So we are considering things like emissions, water, energy use, the generation of waste, the use of land, also ecosystems, and on the social perspective, additional elements pertaining to employment, decent work, education and skills, for example, but also things that have become very relevant more recently with regards to visitor and resident perceptions regarding tourism. And of course, on the economic side, also considering tourism's economic contribution from a more sustainability lens. So things, characteristics of tourism establishments, things like seasonality, etc. And now one of the characteristics of the process in developing this framework that we found was very important from the start was to try and reach out and build as much as possible on existing standards and areas of expertise. So there was an explicit attempt to build across different dimensions, but also across territorial scales, right? So all the way from the need to cater to international data demands, such as the SDGs, but also national, right? Tourism strategies, but also mainstreaming tourism and other economic policy, for example, and also subnational and local levels measurement needs. So we could consider that there was an explicit attempt from the start to consider this as a 360 approach to tourism, right? Considering the different sustainability dimensions, the different territorial scales, and also reaching out beyond the tourism community, very much also within the statistics community, and including different types of expertise, such as, well, of course, tourism statistics and accounting, but very much also environmental statistics and accounting, labor statistics, geospatial statistics, etc. Now, here's a little bit a summary of the process that took place. Here, one important element to highlight, perhaps, is that this was very much, of course, a technical development process, but also very much one of consensus building, right? So we had to make sure that this was being developed in the most rigorous fashion possible, but also ensuring that everyone around the table felt comfortable with the result and felt comfortable also with the scope of ambition, right? Because ultimately it does have to be, it has to be realistic while maintaining also a certain level of ambition. So here are some of the pilots that have fed the development of the framework, because it was considered very important that this framework would be feasible, right, in a majority of countries. So besides, of course, promoting a modular and stepwise approach towards its implementation, it became very important also to learn from practical experiences in countries. So the framework has been tested in 14 areas with a subnational focus, and 15 experiences have had a national focus, which also goes to pinpoint the importance of the different territorial scales when it comes to tourism, and particularly the subnational one, because that's really where everything happens when it comes to tourism, its management, and also its impacts, right, on the local population, on the environment, at the places visited. Here, now, as Alexander pointed out in the beginning, this framework was endorsed at the last session of the UN Statistical Commission earlier this year, and this was fantastic news, of course, to all of the experts in the countries that worked very hard on this process over the past years. And I think I have seen some of the contributors also in the audience with us today, so that is fantastic. And in a nutshell, so this framework was developed by an expert group under the leadership of the Committee of Statistics of UN Tourism. There was an editorial board first chaired by the Philippines and then by Canada. And the expert group on MST was chaired by Austria, in fact, by Peter, who is with us today. And the endorsement that took place earlier this year was was in fact quite enthusiastic. So 34 countries intervened. There were a total of 3 regional statements on behalf of the group of African countries, also on behalf of the European statistical system, including the European Union and its member states and the EFTA countries, and also by the group of Gulf cooperation countries, as well as ILO and the main international organizations, including the UN system, which have also been quite active in this development. And another perhaps important piece of information is that this framework has been recognized also by the UN Chief Executives Board as an example of moving beyond GDP to value what counts. And in fact, as the only sectoral example that exists that has attempted to do this to date. Now, these are the resolutions and the decisions. So on the one hand, we have the endorsement by, so I'm moving in chronological order here. First, this framework was taken to the tourism community at the top level, so to the ministers of tourism. This took place at the end of last year at the UN Tourism General Assembly in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, where these decisions were taken. And then a few months later, it was taken to the UN Statistical Commission for endorsement also by the statistical community. And having these two communities on board just made it that much more powerful, right? Because ultimately we designed statistics to have, right, to meet information needs by users, and these these users on the other hand, embodied by the ministries of tourism, really goes to show that it is possible and productive to build these two build bridges between these two important stakeholder groups. And you will see from both of these decisions adopted is that both of them acknowledge the importance of implementation in countries and capacity building, the importance of interagency cooperation, so between policy and statistics, and also the importance of financing for this implementation stage that we're in right now. Now, just a brief overview of the framework. These are the chapters. There's a chapter dedicated to each one of the main dimensions of sustainability, so economic, social, and environmental. So I invite you to have a look at this document. Perhaps I can put in the chat the link to it in a little bit. And so, well, some of the benefits around this is that it provides the main concepts, definitions, and data organization structures to support a more comparable and harmonized measurement of the main aspects involved with the sustainability of tourism, right? And so it ensures this comparability and this trustworthiness for moving forward in better assessing tourism sustainability. So it's not sustainable tourism, but it's for assessing the sustainability of tourism. And these are some of the policy instruments that have recognized MSD or the promotion of MSD, and it goes all the way from the European Parliament to work ongoing at the regional level, also in the Pacific. We have also adoptions by the G20, both in Saudi Arabia, in India, and more recently also very strong leadership from the Brazil presidency of the G20 as well, that has just taken place. Its tourism ministerial meetings just these few days ago. And now, of course, an important phase of the process has come to an end successfully, but we're entering a new phase of the process with the implementation, right? So this would involve designing an implementation strategy, a selection of indicators based on this framework that will form the basis for UN Tourism also to expand its international data set and reporting from countries. And all of this, again, we aspire to be able to do together with you, again, in a cooperative and co-design approach. So this has been my pleasure. I will now hand over to my dear friend and colleague, Peter Laimer and Julio, for sharing their experiences with this framework.
Okay, so thank you very much, Clara. I hope you can hear and see my presentation. So first of all, thank you very much for invitation for this webinar. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone from wherever you are listening in this seminar. And I want to say something what already Clara mentioned in the end, that we are still on the road of improvement. So the MSD framework is endorsed, which does not mean that we are not working anymore. So I think this is a new start of working and improvement internationally and also nationally. Nationally, in Austria, I would like to give some examples what is going on in my country. But first of all, I want to have some views concerning the purpose of the statistical framework from the statistical point of view. First of all, for a holistic view on tourism, of course, we need a reliable and credible tool for measuring the sustainability of tourism. Second, I think the tool, as other tools we have already, like tourism satellite accounting, for example, it's a basic for research and innovative methodological approaches. Thirdly, it's also a precondition, and this was also mentioned by Clara before, a precondition for comparable and consistent data for the users. In tourism, we have one issue, and this is one of the issues which I like most, because we have a multidisciplinarity of tourism, which means that we have to have a very comprehensive statistical framework for measuring the tourism and the sustainability of tourism, which concerns the social, the environmental, and the economic environment. Of course, the statistical framework brings new recognition on tourism policy, but also on tourism statistics. And last but not least, the statistical framework, of course, gives also a greater credibility to tourism statistics itself. But on the way I mentioned before, on the path, of course, we have some challenges concerning the implementation and doing this measurement. First of all, we have to take into account different paths according to the different situations in countries concerning the implementation of MSD. Data based on MSD provide a rich database, but many parts are unused still. The governments concerning the MSD or the implementation is very important. So the collaboration between various stakeholders and authority is really a precondition to implement the MSD framework. And last but not least, we have to have a clear objective in relation to the compilation, but also in relation to the governing authorities to find compromises on both sides, what concerning financial means, for example, but also the consideration of MSD within the various national statistical programs. Concerning the Austrian development, I will give some examples. First of all, as in many other countries, we have a master plan for tourism. A master plan is always a paper for setting the tourism goals in the near future. What was new in this master plan, which was developed in 1819, is to deal also with physical indicators, and which goes beyond the measurement, the economic measurement or the physical measurement concerning arrivals and overnight stays, which is including also the dimension, the social dimension, and also the environmental dimension. I have to say that the master plan for tourism was developed before COVID, and it was also developed before the statistical framework or the endorsement of the statistical framework on MST, because it was already recognized by the policy here in Austria that we have to have a more holistic view in regard to data on tourism. I mentioned it already, a lot of concerning the developing of tourism related indicators, a lot of stakeholders were involved from the ministry, from private research institute, the academic world was included, also the Austrian National Tourism Board. So it was a variety of stakeholders included who are working in the field of tourism in the wider sense, but also in the narrower sense. On behalf of the ministry, Statistics Austria developed a set of indicators, and the criteria for developing these indicators was several issues which are mentioned here. So there must be an informative value for the users. What is very important, of course, we looked before developing these indicators on the availability of basic data, on the practicability of the data, on the timeliness of the data, on the availability of time series for monitoring, and we looked also to the continuity and the comparability of the data, which are one of the preconditions for comparing the results. We developed in total 50 indicators. We had an internal group within Statistics Austria, but we had also a working group with external partners. So here you see the list of these 50 indicators initially proposed. 26 indicators of these 50 indicators were finally shortlisted. And in the end, we had these 26 indicators. And finally, 16 indicators are mentioned in the yearly tourism report, which is published by the ministry. And this was throughout the years the first time that we are dealing with indicators in the official reports on tourism. And this is, by the way, also discussed in the parliament. We have a tourism committee in the parliament where we are presenting the figures and the data. What was also very important in regard to this tourism master plan, that we are developing also regional TSAs. We had already TSAs for several regions since more or less 20 years, but now all the important federal states are included in this research. And we have for the reporting years 2018 and 2021. So for 8 federal provinces, we have regional TSAs. And since yesterday, I know also that we are continuing with this work for the reference year 23, again for all federal provinces. Austria was also part of the MST UN Tourism pilots. So we contributed to these pilots, what was already mentioned also by Clara. And the pilots, of course, are important for the whole project to test the framework. This is important. Also to give feedback to the framework and to discuss also policy-related questions from authorities. And I think, and I'm sure that this work is going on, and also invite all the countries to contribute to this important work, to these best practices, because I think this is one of the ways to learn from each other's work, and it's important for improvement. Yes, Austria put some data, and also we were including also some MSD-based indicators. Shown here, for example, we have a guest satisfaction survey, for example, which is run by the Austrian Tourism Authority. We have the overnight stays, arrivals. We have employment, value added based on the tourism satellite accounts, for example. But we have also environmental oriented data, like the share of renewable source of energy in the gastronomy sector, but also in the hotel sector. Here on this slide, you see some of these results. And one of the results concerns also the tourism acceptance of the resident people. But this was a survey done by a research institute. It was a pilot survey. And this brings me to the last issue, which I want to present shortly. To measure the social dimension of tourism. In the past, very often this was a little bit a black box, so to say, but there are many initiatives going on in many countries now also to measure the social influence, the social impact on resident people, for example, but also the satisfaction of guests, which is also quite important for marketing, tourism marketing, for example. But for us, it's important to mention, which was also a part of the master plan for tourism. For us, it was important to take over now the measurement on the acceptance of tourism of the resident population. You have heard maybe from some of countries, from European countries, but also from other countries, over tourism, unbalanced tourism. These are some notions which are mentioned. And to handle this from the tourism policy side, tourism data is quite important. And we are really lucky, I have to say, that Statistics Austria, commissioned by the ministry, is doing now this survey. We already started with this survey. We have a regular survey concerning the travel behavior of the Austrians, and the last part of the questionnaire now deals with the acceptance of tourism of the resident people. And so the people or the respondents jump from the traveler to the person who is impacted by tourism positively, but also negatively. There are a lot of examples already available. Here it's mentioned by Germany. They have quite a lot of experience also in this field. And as mentioned before, the collection of the data now is done within the frame of the quarterly service related to the travel behavior of the Austrian residents. We put a lot of, not a lot, I have to say it's only 4 questions, because we want to do not have too much burden on the respondents, because anyway the questionnaire is quite long. But we want to get out more information about the impact on the place of residence, but also for whole Austria. And one of the key questions, of course, is if there are too many or too less, might be also the case, too less number of tourists in the place of residence, but also in Austria overall. As I mentioned before, we already started for the first quarter 24, and we are expecting yearly results. We are expecting these results in the second quarter 2025. So thank you very much for your attention. And just before I'm finishing, I have some conclusions. Tourism sustainability can never be measured by one indicator alone, regardless whether it's a qualitative or quantitative indicator or both. What is also very important for the interpretation of these indicators, it's not only the statistical knowledge, but it's very important to have a profound and a deep knowledge of the whole regions or the region. Measuring the sustainability of tourism requires data comparable over time and space. And last but not least, MST is important, gaining reliable information on tourism in its wider context, and very important, of course, it's necessary to have this data and information available on sub-national level. So now, thank you very much for your attention, and hand over to my dear friend Julio. We are happy that finally you are here. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm happy I made it because there was some confusion on the system because of the time difference, and I thought it was starting later. But here I am, and I was able to listen to both presentations, and I'll be sharing mine in a moment. Okay. I hope you're able to see my screen. Excellent. So, as Peter has said, well, social sustainability is probably the element of sustainability in tourism that is harder to measure, and that requires almost there's no I can't think of any other way to properly measure it, but with surveys or with polling the opinion of both the visitors and the residents. Since we are, as the Tourism Office of Spain, are not in charge of official tourism statistics anymore since 2015, that is the National Institute for Statistics, INE. We are more focused on the qualitative aspects and the social elements of tourism sustainability, and we decided a year and a half ago to start a pilot project to try to design and test an indicator or a simple set of indicators that should be able to capture the residents' attitudes towards tourism. The main aim of this project is to develop this indicator that it should be easy to understand and to implement, but it's still meaningful. Still should be telling us the most important things about the underlying reality. So as I said before, we decided to undertake this project as members of the working group on MST, and also because we wanted to derive from this clear tools for policymakers to counteract the emerging problems regarding social sustainability. As Peter already said, we are not inventing the wheel here. There have been innumerable projects already regarding measuring local perceptions or residents' perceptions. We did a systematic review of academic literature with 64 scientific articles, only based on surveys, and from starting at the end of the 2010s, the beginning of the 2010s. We also we have been undertaking a satisfaction survey for international visitors in Spain since 2022, and we have also derived from this experience some insights. And since we don't have much time, I'll try to go quickly over it. The survey that we have designed is an online survey that is being administered on a consumer panel. That has some pros and some contrasts, some things that are positive and some that make it more difficult. For instance, it was harder to get enough this population group above 65, we were able in the end to have some 15% of our sample from this age group. On the other hand, it allows us to repeat the survey and have the survey answered by at least 50% of the respondents on both ways, because we're doing 2 waves of interviews. One we just finished that went from the end of August to the middle of September, and the other one is going to be running in November, end of October and November. So we will be polling the temperature on the resident population in 2 different moments in time, when there are a lot of tourists around and when there are not so many. There is one key aspect of this study that comes from a study made by NIT that was mentioned by Peter before, that focuses on measuring the attitudes of the population in 2 planes. One on a personal plane and another one on a personal dimension, and another one in a community dimension. So we're asking, how do they think that tourism affects them in their personal life, and how do they think that it affects their community? We're using the Likert scale from 1 to 5, the same one that we use for our satisfaction survey, and it has a lot of advantages to use this scale. We also are trying to identify factors that are influencing this perception. And the sampling method is very simple. It's a stratified probability sampling with simple allocation with 3 strata that we have divided all the Spanish cities and villages of more than 5,000 inhabitants in 3 groups based on their tourism intensity. And that is we have divided the official population of that city or village by the number of tourists that were in the month of August of 2023. And so we have a tier of high intensity, middle intensity, and low intensity. The survey is fairly big. We have just finished the first wave, and we got 13,111 answers. And we are repeating that, as I said, in a couple of months. We have included some of the most visited destinations have a requirement of at least 150 questionnaires. And as I said before, it was important for us, since it's an online survey, that all age groups had enough representativity in the sample. We also asked how many years everyone has been living in the destination, because it's probably not the same if you just arrived, that if you've been living there for 10 or 15 years. That's one of the hypotheses. There might be a difference in the answers. If they live or work near or in the historic center of town, for instance, I live here in Madrid, but I don't see a tourist, because where I live, there is no tourism. I live in the outskirts of town. And also important to know if someone in their family or themselves work or have a professional relationship to the tourism industry, because they have a higher stake than most people would have regarding tourism. I just want to go very quickly over the factors that we decided to include in the survey. They are not pulled out of thin air. They come out of a study that Andalusia, Spain region in the south of Spain, very, very touristy region. They did 5 focus groups with different population groups, and they obtained a series of factors that we used for this study. They formulated them as statements with which the respondent can agree strongly to strongly disagree in the same scale from 1 to 5. So is tourism good for the local economy, increases employment, creates congestion in public transportation, healthcare or public services, attracts new investors, increases the price of apartments. So you see it's a mix of positive and negative statements or factors. that we have 15 of them, and they're evenly spread. There's 7 and 8. And the idea is to derive from this a system where the policymakers can really know what is driving support or what is driving rejection of tourism in their destination or in their typology of destination. So is it traffic? Is it the cost of living, cost of housing? Is the loss of identity that is driving rejection? What is more important for support? Is it the economy? Is it the fact that you have more leisure options in your destination? That there is more investment done on the public services? All these things, I think, are having an indicator that can measure the temperature over time and that can allow you to compare yourself with others is important. But having this tool is even more crucial because it will allow the policymakers to at least know what they have to tackle first if they have a problem of rejection. And we have already the results for the first wave. We're still starting to analyze them, and we will be publishing them together with the second wave at the end of January, probably. So as I said, we have the 2 waves planned, and there's a lot of analysis that can be done with this data. And I think I hope I've left some time for questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Julio. Thanks also, Clara and Peter, of course, for your presentations. So now we have a little bit time left. Yes, like a few minutes for questions. So please, if you have a question, raise your hand. In the meantime, Pania, maybe you can enable the use of microphones and cameras so people can also ask the question themselves. So please, if you have a question, raise your hand. And maybe while we wait for the first question from the audience, from the live audience, maybe I can start with a question which we have received from the registration form. And that there was a question on the registration form about the impact of the changes from the SNA update, which is also going on at this moment. So the update of the system of national accounts, which will be then endorsed basically next year by the Statistical Commission. So whether there are impacts from this SNA update on this new framework of measurement of sustainability of tourism.
Yeah, I'm happy to catch that one. So yes, indeed. So we have from UN Tourism, as part of our Committee on Statistics, been following closely the developments on the SNA revision, as we do also the various other revision processes that have been ongoing, right? Like the balance of payments and also the classification of the CPC and the ISIC and also more recently the Manual of Statistics of International Traded Services, which all of them also touch upon and are very relevant for tourism measurement issues. So we have been following those developments quite closely on the SNA. We know that tourism accounting has been included also as an example of thematic accounts within the SNA. So we're very happy to see that. And we understand that there will be a mention also of the statistical framework for measuring the sustainability of tourism. Where precisely we're not entirely sure, but this is something that has come up also as a comment as part of the consultation processes. And then, of course, this is an inherent part of all statistical development. No, so this is the first, let's say, the first version of the statistical framework for measuring the sustainability of tourism. In a few years' time, of course, the world evolves. Other statistical standards that this is based on also evolve. So there will be time also for a revision of this framework. And then very important also to note is that this, while this framework is an important step forward, it is far from perfect, right? A lot of work went into it, but it still has ample room for improvement. And it's it's going to be alive as other statistical standards are as well. I hope that more or less gives some impressions.
Yeah, thanks. We were just trying actually to enable the microphones and the cameras. So on block it didn't work. So let me try if I can do it individually. So I will first go to Dale and let me enable your microphone so you can ask your question. So yeah, please.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, works. Great.
Hi. Excellent presentations. I'm glad to see everyone. I actually was a member of the expert group in the past, but I am quite worried about the progress with regard to the Glasgow Declaration and the progress toward net zero. And when I look at the UN Tourism website, what I see is information from 2019. And I don't really want to put Clara and others on the spot, but I think it's an overall problem, perhaps to be discussed with WTTC. But I think it's really, really important to have some indicators of what our progress is towards net zero, because actually, as far as I can tell, we're going in the wrong direction. So is it possible to put some sort of scoreboard on the UNWTO, UN Tourism website, to keep everyone on track? Thank you.
Yeah. You want to react to this directly, or should we take another question and then you react? Whatever works.
As you prefer, Alexander. I'm happy either way.
Just take, please go ahead and answer this one. And in the meantime, I enable the next speaker. Thanks.
Okay, super. Yeah, so likewise, it's really nice to see you again, Dale. So Dale used to work, in fact, for the World Trade Organization, and Dale has also been a very important contributor to the development of this framework. Now, Dale, you ask a question that unfortunately I'm in not a very good position to answer because I'm in the statistics department, and the Glasgow Declaration is being handled by my colleagues more in the policy department on sustainable tourism. But what I do know is that there is indeed, from speaking to my colleagues, there's an intention and there's a will to streamline this effort towards a more comparable measurement through MST, right? Because one of the indicators that can be derived from the MST framework relates to emissions by the tourism industry, and that this be also adopted as part of the Glasgow Declaration kind of responsibilities, right? That signatory entities of the Glasgow Declaration have to abide by, and that one of those would be to report on emissions, and that those emissions reported should be measured in line with the MSD framework, right? To allow for that international comparability. And then I take note of your idea for a scoreboard. You're absolutely right. Down the line, that's also very much our line of thinking. So once this framework gets implemented more comprehensively in countries around the world, this will feed also the data reporting that we do at UN Tourism.
Thank you. We have another question from Amara. So Amara, if you want to come in.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amr Noor. I'm a principal advisor at the UN Statistic Division and the focal point of Beyond GDP. So my question, actually, thank you for the presentations. And my question goes to maybe Clara, but also to the other panelists if they wish, of course. Clara, I mean, unfortunately, we didn't have time to go through the content or the substance of the sustainability framework of tourism. All right. I mean, so my question would be directly, since it has been praised by the CEB as a kind of a beyond GDP thinking and approach, if you were asked to maybe highlight maybe what are the most innovative 2 or 3 elements that earned that framework such description, that would be really useful. I would really appreciate that. And as I say, Peter can come in, of course, and Julio if they wish. Thank you.
Thanks, Amir. So who wants to take this question?
I'm happy to give it a first go, perhaps, and then Peter and Julio are welcome to jump in.
Okay.
So my understanding of the recognition of the MST framework as part of the Beyond GDP Valuing What Counts document principally goes in the direction of it being a first attempt at integrating across different types of data domains, right? Both conceptually, but also in practice when it comes to different data sources. And I think this is really one of the principal merits of this framework, right? So as I mentioned before, this framework does not have the ambition of being perfect, but did have the ambition of taking that step in the right direction. Because there's a lot of information out there, oftentimes, especially when it comes to tourism, right? So tourism is very cross-cutting, right, across different industries. So in fact, when we speak of the tourism sector, we often speak of the tourism industries. There are 10 different industries that have been identified as part of the tourism sector for international comparability purposes. And this includes, of course, accommodation for visitors. It includes the different forms of transport by air, by road, by rail. It includes cultural services. It includes sports and recreation. So there's 10 different tours. So this just goes to show how cross-cutting it is. And I think also because of that, it made a lot of sense also that this sort of first sectoral approach to moving beyond GDP towards integrating different pieces of data and statistics from across the vastness, right, of the statistical system into something that is specifically focused on one sector to meet specific sectoral information needs is quite innovative, in fact, in that sense. It's, in fact, the only one that I am aware of, but perhaps there are more initiatives of this kind ongoing, but perhaps that is what merited that recognition in that document.
Maybe I could add also, as Clara mentioned, it's a first attempt to integrate different data and different topics of statistics, like environmental statistics, energy statistics. We have, for example, the issue concerning combining tourism satellite account with CEA, so with the system of environmental and economic accounting. So I think this is a big step further, not only looking to the economic development, but also to combine these issues. And of course, and Clara mentioned it already, it's not perfect, and it's an ongoing process. And it's not a compilation guide. So this will be the next steps, what Clara also mentioned in the end of her presentation, that we have to think about how to, concerning the compilation, concerning the best practices in the countries, to help and to support the countries to integrate the MST framework in their national statistical frameworks or frames. Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
No.
Yeah, Julio, please go ahead.
Well, just my 2 cents. Measuring resident attitudes or visitor satisfaction, these kinds of things are well beyond GDP. I mean, you can have a glowing industry in terms of contribution to the GDP of your country, but it might be generating problems with over-tourism, and visitors might be not getting the full worth, but they might not be repeating. All these things are crucial for the tourism industry, which is an industry that is produced and consumed in the same place. And we cannot just measure the economic impact. So I think one of the, if not the most important highlight of MST is that it combines those three, and it has been able to properly standardize and define the three pillars of sustainability for tourism.
Thank you, Julio. So we are now already slightly over time, so maybe we can wrap up here. I would like to thank you all three for presenting today. It's been a pleasure and very informative. Normally, we would enable the microphones and videos of everyone and give you all a big round of applause, but apparently this doesn't work today. So just a big thank you from our side also, yeah, in the name of all participants. And I also want to mention that we will share the recording and the presentation slides later on the global network of data officers and statisticians. So if you wish to ask further questions or if you want to watch the presentation again, please go there. And that's it. Thanks so much. Thanks,
Peter, Julio, and Clara. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you, Alexander and Panya.
Thank you very much.
Peter and
Thanks,
Julio.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Ciao.